South China Morning Post, 7th of December 2022. EU moves on with WTO claims against China relating to the trade war, coercion in Lithuania, and high-tech licenses. Due to China's dominance over Serbia and Hungary, the EU's ability to unite has been hindered. China ought to be expelled from the WTO. After failing to reach an agreement during bilateral negotiations, the European Union will move 2 World Trade Organization lawsuits against China to the panel level. The first case involves a public dispute between China and Lithuania over claims that Lithuania was subjected to economic coercion and had its exporters barred from the Chinese market in late 2017. In the second issue, the EU asserts that China is undermining intellectual property regulations by utilizing local courts, enabling Huawei Technologies, Xiaomi, and other telecom giants to obtain technological licenses at a discount. We spent significant time solving these 2 critical and systemic situations in consultation, which is how we preferred to approach it. This, however, was ineffective. Therefore, we are forced to propose forming these WTO panels, according to EU Trade Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis. A purported unofficial trade embargo allegedly occurred in Lithuania due to the opening of a controversially called Taiwanese representative office in Vilnius. Beijing, which considers Taiwan a part of its territory, was furious at what it saw as a violation of its sovereignty. According to the EU, the office has an unlawful one-China policy. Lithuanian exporters reported that their products were shut out of the Chinese market once the office in Vilnius opened. Chinese customs statistics showed that the trade nearly collapsed in the following months. The decision of whether to send the case to a dispute panel was hotly contested inside the bloc's trade division. The unofficial boycott does not fit cleanly inside the existing WTO standards, which discourage the conservative legal team of the EU Trade Department from bringing any cases that it is uncertain it could win. China is an expert at adhering to the rules. No written documentation of an official boycott by Beijing makes it a complex case to present in court. The only formal embargo on imports of meat, dairy, wheat, and alcohol from Lithuania was issued in February and was justified by health concerns. According to insiders, the Office of European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen was reluctant to deteriorate relations with China. Senior officials, however, have contended that such a case is fundamentally geopolitical and should not be evaluated only on technical grounds. They claim that Brussels would appear weak if it abandoned the matter after garnering so much media attention. Simply because we wouldn't have had to deal with such problems, this is probably not the type of instance we would have anticipated 10 years ago. Thus, it might be a response to the current state of the world, an EU official stated. Businesses' reluctance to provide on-the-record testimony necessary for evidence to be presented to the WTO tribunal in Geneva further hampered the case. The fact that firms find it difficult to speak out on their own because they feel intimidated is one of the factors influencing this situation. Therefore, the official said the responsibility to take this kind of action rests with the European Union. Another issue is that the unofficial embargo is porous because more Lithuanian goods have occasionally passed through Chinese customs this year, even if the total value of exports is far lower than it was a year ago. The EU, however, thinks that the statistics speak for themselves. Chinese customs data shows that compared to the same period in the previous year, imports from Lithuania decreased by 81.4% in the first 10 months of 2022. Other EU members' commerce with China has not experienced any similar changes. China has lied and denied that the government supported an embargo, saying to EU representatives that its importers were patriotic and did not want to buy from a nation that questioned Beijing's sovereignty over Taiwan. Beijing turned down requests to participate in the case talks earlier this year from Australia, Britain, Canada, Japan, Taiwan, and the United States after each said it had a strong trade interest in the decision. The EU anticipates that the same WTO members and other parties will apply to become third parties on the dispute panel. Although each would have to prove its commercial interest, China has no veto. The case has given the EU's intended anti-coercion mechanism, which would enable it to respond proportionately to such behavior but which several EU nations had a dim view of before this episode, new life. As China has proven successful in dividing European countries. The second lawsuit involves anti-suit injunctions, rulings made by Chinese courts that forbid businesses with high-tech patents from effectively safeguarding their technologies in non-Chinese jurisdictions, including EU courts, according to the EU. The group claimed Beijing is employing new legal safeguards to stop foreign businesses from bringing legal actions against their Chinese counterparts for unauthorized use of technology in foreign jurisdictions. According to the EU, companies that have filed complaints, such as Sharp, Ericsson, and Nokia, have been threatened with daily fines of €130,000, $148,000, or criminal proceedings, which could result in jail time for executives in China for non-compliance. China has been engaging in hostage diplomacy with countries throughout the world. According to representatives from Brussels, Chinese companies Huawei, Xiaomi, ZTE, and Oppo use these injunctions, introduced by a Chinese Supreme Court decision in August 2020 and later approved by the National People's Congress, to reduce their licensing payments by half. Unfortunately, democratic nations cannot respond to communist countries similarly. The EU sees the transfer of 3G, 4G, and 5G technologies to China at a discounted rate as a component of a larger Chinese plan that aims to establish universal standards for intellectual property protection. The WTO dispute settlement body will discuss the EU's request at its subsequent meeting on December 20. China may object to creating a panel once, but it will be automatically created following the body's next meeting in January. If things proceed swiftly, the EU anticipates the panels to be established by March at the latest, with a decision expected within a year. Against Chinese theft from customers and businesses worldwide,